Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's baddeezbizzare. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have been gone for a week because I was literally so sick. Like, I had strep throat, and I have not had strep since I was a literal child, like since I was 10 years old. So having it again, like, it was terrible. It took me out. Like, it's crazy. I come to you bringing flowers in the fro, you know? Oh, is that the Emerald City? Yes. Let me show you the full thing. Like, that is the Emerald City from Wicked. To know a little more about me, I actually work at Ulta Beauty. And when we get setups for movies or fragrances or something, and it's something we like, but when they throw it out, we can take it home if we want. So as soon as I saw the Emerald City setup for all of the Wicked makeup setups, I called dibs on it, and I was like, I'm bringing it home. So yeah, I got to take the Emerald City. And this is about the book versus the movie now. I did watch the musical on YouTube, and to see if there were any differences in the movie as well, and there aren't. We'll have to see part 2 as well to see if there's any big differences, but there wasn't any differences from the actual musical. So that's why I won't be doing a book versus the musical, because I haven't seen the musical in person, and I went to see the movie, and that's the big thing right now, and they're the exact same. So we are going to be talking about the book versus the movie. Also, PSA to note, I know things cannot be like exact from a book. Like, from being an avid book reader, you just know nothing is going to be the same in the movie. And particularly when you do musical too, there are things you have to break up to make it more digestible for an audience that doesn't read, but they like watch musicals. It's a whole different thing from bringing it to words into like actions that we see on screen or on stage. So this is not going to be a like mean critique of like, oh, well, this wasn't the exact same from in the book. I know it's not supposed to be. You are not going to see that. We're just going to talk about some differences, if they were good and bad, and what I thought of the movie. And if you want to see me breaking down the Wicked book, I do have a 4-part series here on YouTube. And then I have one big video. If you're like, I am not in the mood to watch a 4-part series, I make one long YouTube video about the whole book as well. So, check those out if you'd like to. Also, like, share, and subscribe if you know anybody, or you yourself likes books and movies and shows and likes to talk about them and stuff like that. Go ahead and give a follow. I'd love to have you here. So without further ado, let's get into Wicked, the book versus the movie. Okay, so first impressions from the movie was that it was more comical than I was thinking. And what I mean by that is that I laughed a lot in this movie. There were a lot of funny moments compared to the book. If you know the book, if you watch my videos, the book is very serious and dark sometimes. A lot of symbolisms about culture and politics we have today, so there isn't a lot of room for laughter, at least for me. So seeing the movie and being able to laugh a lot was really nice, actually. I really liked the comical twist that the people who made this musical and then it turning into a movie were able to do. Like, this is how we're like this is a good example of how comedy is used to make light of a situation or things going on in the world. I really liked it. I laughed a lot in this movie. It was very comical, actually. And I didn't expect to be. I didn't think it was going to be comical at all. And I laughed a lot. And even more so when I went to watch the actual musical on YouTube, I laughed even more. So, like, could you think how much you would laugh, like, when you see people on stage So I actually was very happy about that. I liked the comical spin. As someone who likes watching dark stuff as well and serious stuff, it can take a toll on you all the time. So to see it, something so serious, become a comedy and make light of the situations the characters were in, I really enjoyed that. I really think it was a good idea to do that. So I liked that. I liked that the movie was kind of comical. That's really all I have to say for the way the musical was done. The next differences I'm about to get into is like character and like analysis differences. So one more critique I have about just like the musical itself was that the musical that's on like the stage is just like an hour and 50 minutes long, whereas the part one movie we saw was almost 3 hours. I think the pacing was great because it did not feel like it was almost 3 hours. I actually really liked it. I felt like the pacing was great. The storytelling was really good. So I didn't feel like it was 3 hours, and I don't care anyway. If you know a movie's 3 hours and you're mad about it, why'd you go see the movie? You know, if you can sit through a 3 hour Marvel movie, you can sit through a 3 hour musical. You know what I mean? So I was not mad about how long it was. The pacing was really nice. And also you have to think about in musicals that are on the stage, in live action musicals, you know, they can just jump from part one to part two to part three, versus a movie, they have to show how they physically got to each area. And I think that's what made the movie longer than the actual musical, because you know they're doing a part two that's on the second half. But if you watch the live action musical, it's just part one and two is just an hour and 50 minutes long. Whereas in the movie, they have to show how they got to each of these places physically. Like if they're going from Shiz to the Emerald City, they've got to show how they got to each thing. They had to do a transition. They couldn't just do like, bring out stage one and then stage two. So that's something to note as well. But I liked it. The pacing was really nice. Now let's get into the character and story differences. The first one I noticed was that Frex in the movie was seen as the governor of Munchkin Land, whereas in the book, you know, it's actually the mom, Melina. She is not the governor, but she's the granddaughter of the current governor, and when they pass on, it is her turn to be the governor. She did not want to be the governor, so she married Frex, who was actually a priest, so she could leave the family and not do that anymore. So it was cool to see they kind of switched their roles. But I do think taking out his religious element took away from the story, as how we can talk about how religion works in this way too, as either a controlling aspect, or it can save you from, you know, like bad thoughts and stuff like that. Having Frex be a priest in the books made it even more notable that Elphaba comes out the way she does as a baby, and that she becomes a witch later. It was like a contrast. So to not make him a priest anymore kind of took that away. But if you didn't already know that, you don't really care. But as someone who read the books, I wish they would have kept a religious element and like to show that Frex was a priest. That was the first difference about it. The next one, when they show Melina, Elphaba's mom, being like adulteress, you get this air of like, oh, Elphaba came out like that because her mom was a hoe or something like that. But because Frex was a priest and he literally left Melina on the day she was giving birth to Elphaba to go preach to people, you notice that Frex kind of cheats on Melina too and puts religion first over his family. And Melina does that with cheating on Frex with other people. So it's a contrast. Both of them are not giving their all in a relationship for different things. So it shouldn't just be the sole blame of Elphaba coming out the way she does on Melina. Because Frex is not perfect either. So, yeah, I wish they would have kept the religious aspect in the movie. But it's whatever. They still did really good. There's a scene when Elphaba and Nessa Rose, her little sister, are in a garden, and Elphaba uses her powers as a kid. In the book, there's hints to her maybe having some type of magic, but nothing's ever said clear cut. Elphaba does not show any magical powers until she's like 30, like until she actually leaves the Emerald City. Um so to show it so early, I get why they had to, but in the book, she wasn't like this magical person yet. Magic was actually in no high regard anymore since the wizard came. No one really like looked at magic like anything mystical anymore. It wasn't something people used like that anymore. In the movie, you see that Elphaba ends up staying at Shiz's university because Nessa was going there and the father was like, look after Nessa. In the book, it was the other way around. Elphaba was the one going to school because she was older. She was very studious. She wanted a degree. And because of things that happen in the book, Nessa has to come later, but not to watch over Elphaba. It's actually because they needed Elphaba's old nanny to be her and Glinda's chaperone in her room, and Nessa, they were like, Nessa might as well come along too and go ahead and start school early. So it was actually the other way around. Elphaba was the one going, and then Nessa came after. But I feel like it still served its purpose. Yeah, I still feel like even though they twisted the way it happened, I still feel like the purpose was still made like clear. Thing I would say is Madame Morrible in the books never cared for Elphaba. Like, she never really cared for any of the students. You see later that she ends up trying to recruit Elphaba, Galinda, and Nessa Rose as agents for the wizard, like they do later in the movie, but it's so much later. She was never really like, oh my gosh, you have these magical powers, you're so special. She in the books was just like, oh, this is convenient, let me use these three. But she never cared about Elphaba, she never cared about Galinda, and she never cared about Nessa. But she definitely is evil. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. Madame Morrible never cared for Elphaba. But it was good to see in the books that, or in the movie, that someone actually like thought she was special and made her feel good and like validated, even though we see that was part of an evil plan later on. Like, oh, you're like, oh, she believes in her and she actually feels validated, but it was for evil in the end. So yeah. A next big thing is Dr. Dillerman, who is the goat teacher. The things that do happen in the movie are still pretty accurate. Like, the animals are being ostracized, like they are literally being erased. And the animals with the capital A, remember, the animals with the capital A are ones that have like human sentience. Like, they have thoughts and feelings, and they can talk and they can do human things. And then there were animals with the lowercase a that were just like regular animals like we know. So I'm glad they still made that like the biggest issue, because that really was. The wizard is a bigot and he is trying to take away rights from certain groups, like someone I know today. Dr. Dillerman was seen as like arrested in the movie because he was like speaking out. In the books, he is straight up just killed. Like, it's even more ruthless in the book. I would say even more like raw and real. The wizard just ups and kills him, and he uses Madame Morrible to do it. He's just straight up killed. He don't get a chance to talk and speak out. But what he does in the books is he actually does something smart. He starts doing research about the human brain and anatomy versus an animal. And because he can prove there is no difference, he is going to present it to the wizard and like other people that are part of his council to say, hey, we are no different, so we deserve rights by biology. Because you can't fight biology. That's what everybody be trying to say now. Oh, well, it's not biologically correct and all this and that. Okay, but if he proves it's biologically correct, then what you gonna say? You know? So, and Elphaba was actually helping him with this research, and that's how they ended up becoming closer. But they just straight up killed him in the books. He didn't have a chance to like speak out and meet with people and stuff. No, he just straight up died. Which was really sad, but it's a story we hear all too often. Let's get into Elphaba's personality. Elphaba in the movie, you see she's very like, she's quiet for the most part, but it's not because she's like shy or anything. It's because no one talks to her and she don't want to talk to anyone else. But you could still see there was a hope in her to want to be accepted. Versus in the book, I would say Elphaba's personality is more like Tina from Bob's Burgers. And I know that sounds weird, but if you read the books, you'll know what I mean. Like, her sentences are very straightforward, but she's very, like, Elphaba was actually pretty funny in the books. Um, yeah, she just meant what she said, and people were laughing and think she was kidding, and she wasn't. So I would actually say Elphaba's personality in the movie, she definitely had more personality, but in the book, she's very much like Tina from Bob's Burgers, like very monotone voice, but she was actually hilarious, which I loved because you don't have to like outwardly show yourself to want to be accepted. So I would say that. Um, Also, there's this hopeful type of feeling in the movie that, like, oh, Elphaba's gonna be accepted and she should be accepted and stuff like that. In the books, Elphaba really does not care because she believes she was born without a soul. She believes she does not have something that resides in her to have feelings of wanting to be accepted. Elphaba really did not care. The only thing she really cared about was taking care of Nessa Rose, her sister, and her father Frex accepting her. She really just wanted the acceptance of her family. Outside people, she could care less. Which we all need to live by that. Like, unless they're your family and they're close to you and care about you, you really should not care. That's how it really was in the books. Elphaba was like, I could care less. She did not care about being accepted. She did not care about going to no school dance. She did not care at all. She really didn't. She believed she was born without a soul. She really thought she was born with like animalistic instincts, which is why she felt connected to animals in the first place and really wanted to help protect them and get their autonomy back. But in the book, she could care less. Like in the movie, you're like, oh, she is trying to be accepted and Galinda's helping her and stuff. She really could care less in the books. She really could. But nonetheless, I see the point they were trying to get across. The next, I would say one of the biggest differences, and one that makes a very big impact if you're a person of color, is Fiero's character in the movie. In the movie, Fiero is portrayed as this dazzling, dashing white man who is this prince. He's a bad boy and he, catches Galinda's eyes, but him and Elphaba are going to have something going on too. Fiero in the books is actually brown. He is a Winky, and they are like they're an indigenous group of people that are outside of Shiz. They have like an indigenous group, and they have like rhinestones like on their bodies as well. And Fiero was described to have blue rhinestones. You could tell in the musical, which has been done before, characters were mixed together to make one because sometimes they're just like, we don't have time or the energy to still have those separate characters. Fiero was actually mixed with another character that was in school with Elphaba. I forget his name. I'm gonna put him on the screen. But Fiero's character was mixed with the looks and personality of this guy who was like the rich bad boy. He was an a-hole and he knew it, but he was a part of Elphaba and Galinda's friend group. And Elphaba actually sees him when she's like older. They don't start a romance or anything, but they see each other and they actually end up like talking a lot when they become adults. But it happens all the time, the mixing of characters, but it's always really telling when you have to mix one that was like a person of color's character to make it a white one, just to make it more digestible for a white audience. Even though everybody has seen this movie, you know who the target audience is. And when Elphaba being played by a black woman is a big deal because she should have been in the first place, people were still trying to say that Wicked in Elphaba's character was for some reason not a symbolism of the stuff people of color and ostracized groups like LGBTQ communities, neurodivergent, disabled communities go through. And when you don't specifically say something's about race, people are always going to make it controversial and say it's not about that. But Fiyero showing up in the books is what proves it is deliberately about race and color and class. Because when Fiyero shows up in the books, the guy who plays the a-hole literally says, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't live if my skin was the color of feces." And as a brown person, you have heard this before. People will literally call your skin shit. That has happened to me when I was a child. That has happened to me as an adult. That is the stuff we have to go through. And Galinda, who is made his love interest in the movies, actually says over and over again, even though Fiyero has never looked or wanted Galinda, will say deliberately over and over again she would never be with Fiyero because he is brown. Over and over again. So when people want to argue and say that Elphaba's character is controversial and it's not about race because she's literally green, she's not a symbolism, we need to get over it and stop making stuff about us. Fiyero's character was the actual deliberate, clear-cut proof that this was about race and class and gender and sexism and all of that. So to erase his race, to make it more digestible for a white and probably straight audience is very telling of what art can actually take away sometimes. Art is supposed to, life imitates art. And this time the art took away the life that was supposed to be, talked about. So I was disappointed in that, but as a person of color, I'm not surprised. I still think they wrote his character well. When I thought of Fiyero in my mind, I thought of that guy. I'm going to put him on the screen. Visually, I thought of the guy who plays Zuko in The Last Airbender. He's been in so many things since then, and he deserves his flowers because he's an amazing actor. But that's all I know to bring him up in, is the Avatar The Last Airbender. That's what I was seeing Fiyero in my head as. And if they would have got him to play him, I think that would have made a bigger impact than Elphaba being green and played by a black woman, because Fiyero is a deliberate, clear-cut example of this is about race. You cannot hide it. You cannot hide behind, oh, Elphaba's green, y'all need to get over it. It might not be a symbolism anyway. Fiyero was a clear-cut example that it was. So yeah, that I would say that was the biggest difference, and was pretty disappointing. One example I have of this happening again in a musical is Phantom of the Opera. There's actually a character in the books, and his name, they literally just call him the Persian. And you already know in Hollywood, and specifically in like white supremacy Hollywood, the whole obsession with making things so stereotypical for Persians and Arabs and brown people who aren't black is like insane and disgusting. But Phantom of the Opera was literally written in like the 1800s, early 1900s. That does not excuse it. But when the guy was talking about the Persian, like he was describing he is from like Persia. And the Phantom was as well. The Phantom actually was like so much scarier than in the musical. And he was from the same place, and that's how the Persian knew him. In the musical, they mix the Persian's character with the lady who is their ballet teacher. I forget her name. To take away the Persian in a musical when we could have actually had like a person of color like shown. Who, and when I say person of color, like there are people of Persian descent who are not brown. Like, I'm not saying we need to just always see people that are brown, but we need to see people who don't look Eastern European all the time. You know what I mean? So that's another example too of like erasing a character just for a white cisgender audience to digest the material better. And if you have to make something more digestible for the privileged majority to understand, should you really be doing it? No, not really. So that was the biggest difference, was Fiero's whole character, and literally that's whitewashing. I would say they literally whitewashed Fiero's character. And Fiero would have made the biggest impact on the musical and the movie if they would have kept him brown. So yeah, that was the biggest thing. The next thing is actually like sent off by her school. She received a letter, and she was like cheered off to go see him because she's so special and she has these powers and she's gonna help all of Oz. In the book, she actually sneaks off to go meet the wizard, and Galinda comes with her. So she sneaks off to meet him. She didn't like the wizard, actually. Like, in the movie, it shows that she's so admiring of him and she loves the wizard and is so hopeful about him. In the book, she could care less. She already actually knew what type of bigot he was. She knew that the wizard was the one doing all this. They actually would say all the time, hey, the wizard is the one doing this. Y'all need to, like, join with him. So Elphaba just sneaks off to tell him about herself. She was like, you're a piece of trash. You need to stop messing with the animals. And what is this about? You want us to work for you and be your agents. Like, I'm not joining in your fascism. So that was one of the biggest things too. Elphaba never liked the wizard. But I do get why they do that in the movie, because they want it to be this big twist. So in the movie, they use Elphaba because her powers allow her to read the Grimoire, which is the grimoire that has all these secret spells in it. In the book, the Grimoire was from the same world as the wizard. Therefore, he is the only one who could actually read it. But the Grimoire was brought to Elphaba's world, like Oz, to be put into safety. Like, whoever hid the Grimoire was trying to hide it from someone evil. We don't know if it was the wizard. We do not know. But the wizard never found the Grimoire until the end of the book, and it was because Elphaba had it all along. She could not read it because it was in a language she could not understand, but she could still decipher it. And she is the one who does give the monkeys wings, but she does it as like an experiment, not that she said spells. Like, it was a book on how to control people through like psychological and scientific ways. It wasn't a book of magic, but they still find ways in the books to mix like science and magic. So not to take away from it, but yeah. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the performances. I think that Cynthia did amazing. I have not seen a lot of her work. The only thing I really knew is when she played Harriet Tubman. And she made the song, I'm Gonna Stand Up, Take My People With Me, and other people of color were trying to use that, and African Americans were like, that is our song for our struggle, make your own. That's the only way I knew her, was from there, and I didn't even know it was her until I looked up like her discography, and I was like, oh, that's Harriet. Which makes the next thing I'm about to say even more kind of like heartbreaking. Usually I know the people on like the list of to be canceled and stuff like that, even though I know cancel culture can be like toxic and stuff. Once I know you've done something that I wouldn't even tolerate in person, why would I try to watch you on TV? That's my way of thinking. So usually I know when a celebrity's been like toxic and stuff like that, or disrespectful to like other races and stuff, and I try not to watch them. But I did not find out about Cynthia's stuff until after I saw the movie. And what I learned about Cynthia is that a couple years ago, she's British, and she ended up doing like a rant on Twitter, which, as from learning about her now, she does a lot. She did a rant on Twitter talking about African Americans and how they are like ghetto and we complain all the time and stuff, which we hear all the time. If I had a penny for every time I've heard that, I would be a billionaire. But it's sad when it comes from Black people who are from different parts of the world, because she got her career start from playing African American leaders and staples in our history, like playing Harriet Tubman. She got her start doing The Color Purple on Broadway, playing an African American, which happens a lot. Most of the time, Black British people are hired and do better in Hollywood than African Americans, even though we're the ones who like started Black Hollywood and made that space. We are rarely the ones who get the part to still be in that space. There should be space for everybody, but if you want to talk about giving credit where credit is due, African Americans usually don't get it, even though we start those spaces. And so to hear that was disheartening. I wasn't surprised after seeing rants she does on Twitter before. I wasn't surprised. I was more disappointed than surprised. But talking about her performance in general, she has a great voice. She did really good. When Defying Gravity came on, I was obsessed. I really loved it. And you can already see all over TikTok, like, people really resonated with Defying Gravity. People who already had seen the musical resonated with Defying Gravity. So the Defying Gravity is an amazing song, and it really, really is something a lot of us needed to hear and remember with the times we are having now and the times we're about to go into, that are pretty like scary and disheartening. So Defying Gravity was amazing. But just Cynthia herself was really disappointing. Ariana Grande, she did really good. I've never seen her act in any, well, no, she got her start in acting. I've never seen her act in anything serious like since she was on Nickelodeon. So she did really well. I feel like she mostly played herself. Like, she was doing an even better caricature of herself, like really like ditzy and like childlike. Even though I know she's not like that in real life. She is an adult. And she was the one, her role is actually the most comical. Like, Galinda's in the musical and in the movie was actually very comical. I did enjoy her character a lot. She brought that. And Glinda's role was really big because it shows you talking about you wanting to do stuff and helping enfranchise groups versus actually doing it, like performative outreach. Glinda is the personification of that. But still, and yet, she and Elphaba are still able to have some type of connection and become friends. So I really liked hers too. I will still say I still could not understand Baby singing sometimes. Like, when she had to do the opera parts, I could not understand. I really needed subtitles. But I mean, that's really just like opera itself. So it's whatever. But I enjoyed both of theirs. Michelle Yao or Yo, hers was amazing. You know, she's gonna eat every time. Really glad she got this role as well. And then Jeff Goldblum playing the wizard. Honestly, I could not see anyone else playing the wizard. Jeff Goldblum is so good at playing assholes. Like, I love to hate him. He's a really great actor. So I liked his as well. He's very talented. Everybody was great. Everybody was amazing. They really did that. I think the promotional tour, they did really good, even though it's very weird, the stuff that's happening, especially all the weight they've lost and stuff. And, you know, talking about that whole curse of, you know, doing the Wizard of Oz and stuff. Kind of scary. So I hope both of them are like okay now that everything's over. So yeah. That's that's my review of Wicked, the movie, and it versus the book. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, I've seen some people say they want me to cover Son of the Witch, which is in a way a sequel. Like, it's just what happens after Elphaba dies in the book. So yeah, I'll cover that. If you want me to read the other books by Gregory Maguire, who did the Wicked book, or read the original Wizard of Oz that came in like early 1900s, like 1920s or 30s, maybe even 40s. Let me know down below. But as far as I know, I think I'm gonna stop with the Wicked stuff now, like here, so I can get to other stuff, because I have so many other things to read and to cover. Let me know. I'm gonna do some polls if you want me to do a book on each ACOTAR book, because I just covered book 1. I honestly, you know how I feel about the books now, but like I said, the next books on are better than the first, so I wouldn't mind covering those other ones. And then I just need to get into other books, and I'm going to be doing more books versus movies, quick videos that are just like a quick summary about books and stuff like that. So let me know what you guys want to see more of. And then along with what I already plan to post, I'll start doing those too. And thank you guys so much for your support. I love you guys' comments and connecting with you all. Follow me on TikTok. I'm baddeezbizzare as well. I'm going to link it down below. Give me a follow and like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.